as the storm became stronger. Now, the thing to note is that Franklin is the first Atlantic hurricane of the season. On average, the first Atlantic hurricane is right around August 10th. So we're right on par. The National Hurricane Center yesterday updating its outlook for the season and saying that it's likely going to be a little bit more active than initially thought. So as we go through September and October, the season ends in November, we will likely see much more activity. Here at home, the big low that we're following across Canada is this guy right across the Great Lakes, and this is the slowest moving storm that we have had in quite a while, prompting rainfall, heavy rainfall in Saskatchewan earlier in the week, then in southern Manitoba, and now slowly churning its way across the Great Lakes. So all areas with cloud this morning east of Superior and then west of Superior as well, right along the lake, will likely see a cloudier, rainier day. This low, as it pushes into southern Ontario tomorrow, is going to give a wetter forecast for Friday. So here's how it breaks down. We see these thunderstorms developing and continued rainfall east of Superior. That'll give a slight risk of some thunderstorms in southern Ontario this morning. Eastern Ontario as well has a risk of isolated severe thunderstorms. Hail is going to be your biggest factor, plus damaging winds. We also see through portions of southern Quebec these pockets of storms as well. So I have that in a few of the communities' forecasts for Quebec. As we head into Friday, you see the front moves its way into southern Ontario, and that prompts again thunderstorms in the same region as today, but a whole lot more cloud further south. So you'll really need to get your umbrella out for the back end of your work week. And then we see all of this active weather spread its way further east. So New Brunswick, you finally get in on the action as we head into Friday. Now there's a bit of uncertainty as we head into Saturday. This particular computer model wants to give widespread rain as we head into Saturday. Not all computer models are indicating the same thing though. In terms of rainfall, Elliott Lake, you're kind of getting the worst of it. Up to about 50 millimeters of rain is possible. Eastern Canada, we've got lots of sunshine in the forecast this morning, a little bit of mist and fog, depending on where you are tuning in from. But this afternoon looks pretty great. 27 today in Sydney, 28 in Fredericton. We slide over to Quebec, and then you can see that risk of thunderstorm for Sherbrooke and the eastern townships. 27 today in Montreal. And then as we hit Ontario, we've got thunderstorms for Ottawa. Temperatures are actually above average in southern Ontario, but just that isolated risk of thunderstorm, just keep that in mind, particularly right around the Toronto area, for example. Further north, it's much more guaranteed. 23 today in Sudbury, 22 in Sault Ste. Marie, 19 in Thunder Bay, so definitely cool. Eastern Canada, that's a look at you. We've got continued air quality advisories in British Columbia, though. We'll detail that coming up. For now, here's your local forecast. This morning, depending on where you're waking up, this is our temperature change map. So it shows how we are playing out today in comparison to yesterday. So for Fredericton, I mean, you're much warmer than yesterday. Quebec City, you're much cooler than yesterday morning. Similar temperatures to yesterday right across southern Ontario. But then you take a look at Thunder Bay, Timmins, and Sudbury. That's not the current temperature. That's your change from yesterday. So Timmins, you're 9 degrees warmer than yesterday, but there's a whole lot of cloud in the region, and there's also a lot of rainfall that's tracking its way across the Great Lakes. So despite the fact that it's feeling a bit warmer, the conditions are also maybe less desirable this morning. So you really do want your umbrella if you're tuning in anywhere right along the border in Ontario, along Lake Superior, and then through northern Ontario, northeast Ontario, I should say, because it is going to be a rather rainy day with the risk of thunderstorm a little bit later on. That's the biggest system in Canada. You can see otherwise it's pretty quiet. We've got some activity in portions of west central Quebec through the eastern townships, but sunshine generally expected for the Atlantic provinces. We are expecting the mist that's present for many communities in the Maritimes and also in southern Ontario to dissipate as the morning progresses. So today in Atlantic Canada, we'll get up to 24 today in St. John's. Beautiful sunshine after all of that gnarly cloud yesterday. I've got a picture coming up in just a second here. 26 today in Halifax and 28 in Fredericton. Isolated risk of thunderstorms in southern Quebec, and that will include the eastern townships, possibly Quebec City. For eastern Ontario, Ottawa, you're also under a thunderstorm risk, and there's a possibility we could see isolated severe storms developing. Now, the biggest risk for you would be hail and very strong winds as well. Rain will persist right along Lake Superior, eastward in towards Quebec. Further south, it's generally a pretty nice day. Winds are today 28, 27 in Toronto. We could see a few isolated thunderstorms developing. These ones likely non-severe, but despite the fact that they could be non-severe, we're still talking heavy rainfall if these storms do develop, just sub-warning criteria. for Dryden today, pardon me, 24 degrees, 25 in Winnipeg. Got a frog in my throat. Lots of sunshine there, and that sun continues all the way as we head towards the Pacific. 26 today in Saskatoon, 26 in Calgary, 27 for Fort McMurray. Very hot into the BC interior. I mean, Kelowna, 35 degrees Celsius, 36 today in surrounding communities, including Kamloops, 25 today in Vancouver. So it is going to be a very sunny day. In terms of your weather conditions south of the border, you just heard Lois speaking about how Tropical Storm Franklin has weakened from hurricane status now to tropical storm as it's moving its way over land. No doubt there, exactly what we would expect to see as the hurricane hits the land and the terrain there. Still heavy rainfall amounts expected, though, up to about 15 inches or over 350 millimeters in some areas of eastern Mexico. Currently in Canada, here's a look at your daytime, or your current temperatures rather. 19 right now in Toronto, 10 in Winnipeg, and 17 degrees in Vancouver. This low right over Ontario is our big system in Canada this morning. But for the east, for the Atlantic provinces, we are seeing just a few showers pushing into western Newfoundland. Otherwise, generally clear conditions and just a wee bit of fog and mist, particularly in southern Nova Scotia. We also have a few showers in the eastern townships through Quebec. In west central Quebec, you're seeing this moisture feed in from the low that's pushing across the Great Lakes this morning. And where it's cloudy right now is likely where it's going to be cloudy and wet through the day today. So we see these storms slowly push their way eastward. Possible risk of thunderstorms in southern Ontario. Could see an isolated severe thunderstorm developing in eastern Ontario. That includes our nation's capital. Then we see a duplicate of this pattern into Friday, though a little more intense. A lot more cloud cover, a lot more precipitation, more storms, and stretch all the way eastward towards New Brunswick. Into Saturday, we might see a very wet day, depending on which computer model you look at. There's a bit of discrepancy with the forecast. Some are saying it could be quite wet. I'm going with the more optimistic forecast. We're going to hope that Ontario stays drier in towards Saturday. But in terms of the rainfall today, you can see there are some heavier pockets. Elliott Lake, you've now been downgraded closer to about 25 millimeters. Western Canada looks pretty quiet, right? We've got air quality advisories plus heat warnings. We'll talk about where coming up in the next half hour. Now it's over to Lindsay. All right. Just Saskatoon dealing with that heavy rainfall, communities outside of Saskatoon, and then we saw that system push into southern Manitoba, dropping a whole lot of rain. Now it's moving across the Great Lakes, so it's been an extended story this week. This morning, I do want to take you all the way to Bonavista, Newfoundland. We got this beautiful photo for beautiful conditions for the Atlantic provinces. Look at these highs. Today, 24 today in St. John's. Can you see St. John's beyond my belly here? 26 in Halifax, 28 in Fredericton. Lots of sunshine expected later on today, which is a relief, thanks to the fact that the last couple of days have been rainier, first on Tuesday in the Maritimes and Wednesday in Newfoundland. Lab City, you'll get up to about 14 today. There is the isolated risk of thunderstorms in southern Quebec later on today, particularly through the eastern townships, but also central Quebec and heading westward in towards Ontario. So just keep that in mind with your forecast. Otherwise, enjoy the warm weather. It is an improvement from yesterday. Ottawa, you are under possibly a severe thunderstorm risk later on today. Isolated cells could develop, and hail and very strong wind gusts would be your biggest factors. Southern Ontario, really hot today, 28 today in Windsor. These temperatures are actually above average. Further north, though, it is wet. I mentioned that system moving across the Great Lakes. So Thunder Bay, Sault Ste. Marie, North Bay, that includes you. That's why your temperatures are a touch cooler. Dryden, Thompson, Winnipeg, you're out of the rain into the clear. So that's why your temperatures are warmer. 25 today in Winnipeg. Now we slide over to the west and we see it's pretty quiet and it's hot. I mean, Fort Mac today in Alberta getting up to 27 degrees Celsius. Prince George, 32, 26 in Yellowknife. So part of why it's so hot is this upper ridge in our jet stream. So that's prompted actually heat warnings this morning. The first warning of the morning in the week for northern Alberta. The temperatures during the day are quite hot, right around that 30-degree mark, but there's not much relief in the overnight hours either. Now, the high pressure not only allowing mild air to move its way well north, but it's also prompting a lack of clearing, really, through British Columbia. So the air quality continues to be incredibly poor through Vancouver Island and much of the BC interior. Environment Canada continuing that air quality advisory. Now, here's a look at your local forecast. Of the border, where we are following Tropical Storm Franklin. Briefly hit hurricane status as it passed over the warmer waters, but now slamming into the Gulf Coast of Mexico. It obviously rapidly weakens because of the terrain in the area, but still considerable rainfall. Later on today, it should be a post-tropical low, but still winds fairly substantial, 65 kilometers an hour. We've seen those winds drop dramatically peaking closer to about 1:30 earlier this morning and last night. Across the country this morning, we've got nice warm temperatures, 19 right now in St. John's, but it was a very chilly morning in portions of New Brunswick yesterday. Near freezing. Take a look at these record lows that were set in New Brunswick yesterday. Canada, we've had a lot of thunderstorms, a lot of rain, and those random cooler days. We're seeing that again this morning as this low crosses the Great Lakes. This really is the biggest weather story across Canada in terms of rainfall. For Atlantic provinces, though, at least today you'll get to enjoy sunshine. Temperatures in New Brunswick will rise into the high 20s. Southern Quebec through the west and then into Ontario as well. We're seeing a whole lot of cloud cover, some showers, definitely heavier pockets of rain on the Ontario side of the boundary, plus thunderstorms are possible across not only northeastern Ontario, but portions of southern Ontario as well. This low will then bring more cloud and rain to the rest of Ontario as we head into tomorrow. But pretty well all around Superior, including Thunder Bay, it's going to be a rainier day. In terms of rainfall totals, they're more amplified on the eastern shore of Lake Superior. Elliott Lake will see about 25 millimeters or so, and the Sault Ste. Marie closer to about 20. Western Canada, every day we've had rain in a separate province. Today it's southern Alberta where we're seeing showers push off the southern foothills. Northern Alberta, though, under a heat warning, temperatures close to 29 degrees during the day, today through Sunday, with not much relief in the overnight hours. And then BC, we're still seeing that air quality advisory in effect. It is extremely smoky still from Western Canada this morning. We are seeing basically the biggest low pressure system across the country sitting right over the Great Lakes. And this is bringing rainfall and a whole lot of cloud and some cooler weather conditions across portions of Ontario for the northwest through Thunder Bay, right along the international border, along the Superior coastline, and then through northeastern Ontario, sliding in through Quebec as well. So this is going to be where we start this morning. Through the day today, we'll see the continued rainfall east of Superior, a few scattered thunder showers mid-afternoon in southern Ontario, and then that thunderstorm activity continuing north of Montreal and west of Quebec City. Into Friday, we see this pattern duplicate itself. More widespread, for sure, across southern Ontario. A whole lot more cloud cover tomorrow, more rainfall and more severity in those storms developing, but also through the same area of Quebec and then finally stretching eastward into New Brunswick. So know that for portions of eastern Canada, Ontario, portions of Ontario, Quebec, and New Brunswick, it will be a stormier end to the work week. Now, as we head into Saturday, there's a bit of uncertainty with the forecast. Some of the computer models are pushing this low right in through Quebec and Atlantic Canada. This one in particular holds it back through southern Ontario. So know that it might be a wetter Saturday depending on where you are. There's still a bit of uncertainty, like I said, with that. In terms of the highs today in the east, 24 today in St. John's, Newfoundland, 26 for Halifax, Fredericton, you'll get up to 28. We see a risk of thunderstorms, as I mentioned, through portions of Quebec and Ontario as well. Eastern Ontario, Ottawa, you might have isolated severe thunderstorms around your region. Hail, strong winds, your biggest factors. Southern Ontario, generally pretty nice today. A little bit of cloud this morning, but we are seeing that risk of thunderstorm, isolated storms around Lake Ontario this afternoon. That's where we have the rain, where we have cooler temperatures later on today from Thunder Bay all the way eastward towards North Bay. Sunshine returns as we hit Manitoba, 25 today in Winnipeg, 24 in Brandon. Nice and hot in Alberta, and then scorching hot in BC. Continued dry weather conditions continue there. Northern Alberta is actually under a heat warning, 29 degrees Celsius right through today until Sunday. And then the widespread air quality advisory continues in BC. We're seeing more counties and communities added as the days progress. So now further north, right along the north coast, both coastal and inland sections have been added for today. That's a look across the country for your Thursday. Now here's your local forecast.